Hello everyone. Today I'm going to present about macroeconomic analysis of EV industrial policy in Indonesia. This presentations and paper as well was written in response to a real and pressing policy challenge in early 2026. Indonesia's EV incentive framework collapsed without a clear replacement. What followed was a textbook policy vacuum. Investor paused, consumer waited, and an industry that had been growing rapidly suddenly stalled. These presentations will walk through a full macroeconomic analysis and we will cover why the policy dynamics played out the way they did, or the government did, the macroeconomic consequences across five channels, and what policy framework looks like today, and what concrete recommendations are needed to get Indonesia back on track. Well, the the key framing point is this is the macroeconomic analysis, not just a policy review. Uh, we are asking about what happens to GDP, inflation, employment, investment, and the trade balance depending on how consistently Indonesia manages its EV policy. Let's start why Indonesia is in such a uniquely powerful positions to begin with, and why squandering that positions through indecision would be a historic mistake or even a government failure. First thing first is about nickel. Indonesia has approximately 22% of global nickel reserves. This is not a minor detail. Nickel is the primary cathode material in high energy density of EV batteries. Every major battery manufacturer in the world needs access to Indonesian nickel. This gives Indonesia extraordinary leverage in the global supply chain conversation. The market size, the people in Indonesia with a growing middle class, about 270 million, means Indonesia can independently justify battery manufacturing at scale through domestic demand alone, even before any export revenue. This is a major differentiator, differentiator from smaller economies that need export markets to justify the investment. And then the policy timeline. The timeline at the bottom shows the policy arc. The 2020 until 2025 period was genuinely successful. EV sales grew strongly. FDI began flowing in, but the 2026 expire of key incentive without a replacement and destroy the momentum. So what exactly happened in 2026, and why did the policy vacuum such a damage? Let's go to the next slide. EV cells and policy vacuum. This chart is the empirical anchor, and the first is the growth phase in 2020 until 2025. It shows a strong and consistent growth driven by government incentives. The orange shading shows the incentive level. Notice how sales track it almost exactly. This confirms that in the early adoption phase, the market IS the policy. The peak in 2025, this was a natural ceiling. It was a policy supported high point, and the 2026 dropped. The red dotted line marks the policy expiration. This drop is immediate and visible. This is not a show deterioration. It is a sudden removal of the scaffolding that market depended on. This is what policy uncertainty is. this is actually looks like in the data. It is not an abstract or theoretical. It shows up immediately in sales number, investment decisions, and supply chain behavior. From the data from Geikindo in 2025, the 2026 figures are early years estimate from Q1 registrations data and business sentiment survey. This chart shows what happened about the what is it uncertainty uncertainty and the fiscal industrial dilemma. This slide captures the structural tensions at the heart of Indonesia's EV policy making. Neither side is wrong, but reflect legitimate concern. The challenge is in resolving them without paralyzing the policy. In the left side, the fiscal pressure. The 3% deficit ceiling is a legal constraint established in law number 17/2003. Policymakers cannot simply ignore it. The 315 trillion rupiahs subsidy bill is already using up the budget's flexibility. Any new EV spending competes with existing commitments. Uh, and then on the crowding out concern, it is academically grounded, not just a political rhetoric. The short-term politic point is critical. The costs are immediate and visible. The benefits are a decade away. This creates a systematic bias against long-term industrial investment. On the right side, the industrial imperative stress the 15 to 20-year time horizon of factory investment decisions. This cannot be made on annual policy uncertainty. The consumer versus producer framing is powerful. Indonesia could end up buying Chinese EVs assembled from Indonesian nickel. That is the worst possible outcome, I think. And then TKDN or local content, tingkat komponen dalam negeri, requirements are the bridge. They conditions policy public money on domestic value creations. Beyond this internal dilemma, Indonesia also faces four major external macroeconomic challenges. Let's examine those. Subsidy contradiction. This is arguably the most important chart in the paper and in the presentation for public policy impact. The orange bar are fossil fuel subsidies, ranging from 208 trillion rupiah in 2022 to 315 trillion in 2025. These are enormous, politically entrenched expenditure. The blue bars are EV incentive, peaking at 5.8 trillion in 2024 compared to in 2025 the fossil and EV incentive, the ratio is roughly about 75 to 1. What does this mean practically? It means that for every rupiah spent making EVs attractive, it spends 50 to 70 rupiah making petrol artificially cheap. The two policies directly cancel each other out. From the data from IMF, the energy price distortions create macroeconomic costs through fiscal burden, trade balance, and barriers to clean energy transitions that far exceed any short-term social benefit from cheap fuel. The bottom box references the deficit ceiling and crowding out concern. Tie this together. Indonesia is not just contradicting its own EV policy, it is doing so at enormous fiscal costs. Beyond subsidies, three more external challenges compound the problem. Let's look at them together. The first is energy subsidy burden. Uh, it's about 315 trillion rupiah, already covered in detail. The key point is this is not just a fiscal issue, it is a structural market distortions that actively undermines EV competitiveness. The second, fiscal deficit constraint, 3% of GDP. The legal ceiling means Indonesia cannot simply spend more on EV, and expansions requires a trade-off elsewhere. And the third is commodity price volatility. Indonesia's current account is highly exposed to oil price movements. This creates a painful paradox. Oil price spikes that make EV transitions more urgent and also squeeze the fiscal space to fund the incentive that would accelerate it. Again, the transitions or shifting to EV is so realistic, I think. The global interest rate, the capital flows out of emerging market. This raises borrowing costs precisely for the kind of large long horizon investment that EV manufacturing requires, creating adverse timing for Indonesia industrial ambitions. These four challenges do not work independently. They form a compounding constraint system. Breaking through requires addressing all of them with coherent long-term strategy, not a piecemeal policy adjustment. This chart is about multi-channel impact assessment. This chart is the analytical centerpiece of this paper. The explanations is about the five channel is assessed in 1 to 5 scale for both short-term and long-term impact based on the theoretical framework from Mankiw 2021. First is GDP growth. Investment in manufacturing and nickel processing creates high value domestic activity. For example, BYD and Hyundai commitments are already showing up in gross fixed capital formations data. The data from BKPM 2025. Price stability 4.2. EV adoptions, less fuel consumptions, lower import bill, less inflationary pressure from oil shocks. This is a structural hedge, not a cyclical fix. Labor market 3.8. Job transformations, not just creations. Higher skill, higher wage positions in battery and vehicle manufacturing requires investment in vocational training. Capital formation 4.7. This is the highest score. Policy certainty creates FDI and then create a capital inflows, create GDP and create employment. This is a virtuous cycle. Indonesian nickel's advantage makes the underlying investment case unusually strong. And next is the trade balance. Reduce fuel imports improve the current account. Potential future EV or battery export strengthen the component of the GDP. All five channels shows long-term benefits that outweigh the short-term costs. The economic case for the sustained EV policy is not debatable, it is empirically overwhelming. So, what does the current policy framework look like, and where are the gaps? The GDP channel is on the left. I use the Mankiw theory. The expanded identity walk through each component. C is consumptions. This is the smallest channel. Demand incentive boosts consumptions, but what does not build industrial capacity? A subsidized imported EV counts in C, but contributes nothing to domestic value added. I is investment. This is where the real action is. For example, BYD announced a major assembly facility commitment in 2024. The Hyundai LG battery consortium in Karawang is already operational. These are additions to gross fixed capital formations, long-lived assets that generate economic activity for decades. X to M, net export. This is the long game. Indonesia's goal should be to export processed battery materials and eventually assembled EVs. This transforms the trade balance from a structural vulnerability into competitive strength. The price stability channel is on the right. The transmissions mechanism is elegant and direct more EVs on the road, less petrol burnt, and then lower fuel import, and then less upward pressure on domestic energy price, and it creates more stable inflations. This matters enormously is Indonesia context. Historically, Indonesia's inflation is highly sensitive to global oil prices. Every oil price spike creates a difficult policy choice: maintaining the subsidy and blow the budget, or pass through the price increase and trigger inflation. If adoption reduces the severity of dilemma permanently. Now look at the investment channel and the FDI. The battery back to battery manufacturing dominates consistently the largest FDI category. This directly reflects Indonesia nickel advantage. And second is growth through 2025. The total FDI grew to approximately 8.6 billion dollar in 2025. It's strong evidence that the investment thesis was working. And 2026 projected decline. The chart show as projected and 25% decline in 2026. This is the direct cause of policy uncertainty. Investor pausing or redirecting capital to more predictable jurisdictions. From BKPM data, the macro transmissions chain at the bottom is the key conceptual model. Policy certainty creates FDI and then creates capital formations and support GDP growth and creates employment. Break the first link and the interchain stop. Restore it and the chain restart quickly. Now let's look to the policy framework, what exists and where the critical gaps. But policy framework, strengths and gaps, this is a balance and honest assessment. This goal is not to criticize the government wholesales, but to clarify, identify where the gaps are most consequential. The PPNBM exemptions, real market impact proven by the sales data, but fundamentally demand side tool. TKDN is the conceptually the right approach, tying public money to domestic value creations. Bank of Indonesia is underrated contributor. I think the monetary stability is an enabling conditions for a long horizon investment decisions. And the downstream intent is the government understand the strategic logic. The problem is translating intent into binding, credible, and durable commitment. And what is missing? No long-term roadmap in the red side. This is the most critical gap. And the fossil subsidy contradictions already covered in detail. Cannot promote EVs while making petrol cheap. Institutional fragmentations. For ministries with separate mandates is structural inconsistency. No coordinator, no coherent signal to market. Green finance is nascent green bond market cannot finance the scale of investment the sector requires without multilateral support. Based on this framework analysis, the uh, these presentations and the paper propose four concrete recommendations. Let's examine them. These four recommendations are sequenced intentionally. Each builds on the previous and address a specific identified gap. The first is long-term roadmap. This is the foundation recommendations. Without a policy certainty, none of the other recommendations can function properly. And the conditional subsidies. This recommendation addresses the KDN calibrations challenge. The shift from blanket subsidies subsidize an EV regardless of origin to conditional subsidies subsidize the EV that meet local content, employment, and technology investment target is the difference between consumption policy and industrial policy. And fossil subsidy reform. This is the hardest recommendations politically, but the most important structurally cannot promote EVs while subsidizing petrol. The gradual sequencing is critical. The first is, I think, the upfront communications to the from the government to the people, and give a gradual price adjustment, and then targeted cash in transfer for vulnerable households and reinvestment of saving. And the fourth is supply side plus green finance. Demand incentives create markets, supply side policy create industry. Indonesia needs both, but has historically overweighted demand side instruments. Green bonds are multilateral and multilateral concessional finance are the mechanism for bridging the financing gap. Let's bring all together with the conclusion. We can see that the pace fossil subsidy reform with the trajectory, the three lines, the red is fossil subsidies, the green is EV and clean energy investment, and blue dash is the rising in the social protections in the early reform years to cushion lower income household. The IMF said that the four-step sequencing framework on the right is the methodological foundations. Not This is not a theoretical model. The IMF has documented the sequence working in a multiple country case studies. The key numbers at the bottom is by 2035 the scenario project of 240 trillion rupiah in annual saving, and then 80 trillion rupiah redirected to clean energy, EV price parity without additional incentives, and reduce rupiah vulnerability to oil price movements. Is this achievable? Yes, of course. If we can see the example like Iran, Malaysia, Indonesia itself during 2014 until 2015 oil price corrections. All of these cases show that subsidy reform is politically feasible when sequenced correctly with social protections. The conclusion ties everything together with a clear call to action. Indonesia cannot afford to waver on EV policy. Uh, this presentation is not arguing that EV policy is a good idea in principle, but it is showing across five macroeconomic channels with empirical data and theoretical grounding that the evidence is already conclusive. The case is made. First is policy uncertainty is costly, not abstract. It shows up the FDA data, in the sales figures, in the investment postponements. Strategic asset, Indonesia holds a genuinely unique hand. Nickel research, market scale, and already committed OEM investment. And the third is fiscal misallocation, about the fossil subsidy. And the fourth is international comparison, like China, South Korea, Germany. None of them succeeded because they had better natural resources than Indonesia. They succeeded because they had more consistent government. This is replaceable. And the fifth is the window is narrowing. Global battery supply chains are crystallizing. Investment relationships are forming. Policy vacuum does not post industrial development. They permanently redirect supply chains to other countries. About this problem, regarding this problem, it needs commitment, and commitment is a political choice, one that is entirely within the government power to make. Uh, Thank you for your attention. Uh, Thank you.